Looks like they're having some problems at the pulpit, but be
You might
patient.
as well start, Jess, because, they'll start being quiet after you start talking.
We are unmuted? No.
You don't have to do anything. We can do, you can put us in speaker here if you want.
Does he unmute me?
He has. In fact, he has.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm Jess Jones, and I'm an RE Council member and the nominee for the clerk position. I'm also a part of the social media team, so you might hear from me in that way. It's wonderful to see you here this morning in the Great Hall and online. Thank you to everyone who is helping make the service happen this morning. If you're new or returning after a time away, we're very glad you're here. Feel free to fill out a blue welcome card, which you can put in the offering plate later in the service. There's also an online version that you'll see pop up in the chat. We'll put you on our email list so you can receive information about all of our activities. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, religious beliefs, backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles move us to remember that we in Northampton inhabit unceded land of the Pecumtuck and Nipmuc peoples. They remind us to acknowledge our responsibility to face the legacies of dispossession and systemic racism that are part of our collective history, even as we also affirm and celebrate the legacies that inspire us. Today is annual meeting Sunday. The meeting will begin shortly after the end of the service. Everyone is welcome to stay, and childcare is available. If you are on Zoom, you will not need to sign out and sign in again. We're using the same link for both the service and the annual meeting. And now we'll begin our service.
There is no power greater than a community of people discovering what they care about. People asking what is possible, people paying attention, people vowing to make dreams come true, not only for themselves, but for all their neighbors, and for their neighbors' children, and the children's children. Now I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we light our chalice. We light our chalice in celebration. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations. May we bring our gifts of love and service, and may we know that we are not alone, but connected to the universe, to this community, and to each other. And now we're doing something fun this morning. Our story and song are combined. We are going to sing a song I think probably many of you know. It's called All God's Critters Got a Place in the Choir. So we'll start with the chorus and we're just gonna sing it till it's done. The words are on the screen. Uh-oh. Oh no, you don't have to stand up again. Now it's time for us to welcome new members, people who have joined, signed the book and joined the society. since our last annual meeting. And so if you are part of that welcome team, or if you are one of those new members, I invite you to come forward now. Yeah, you guys are great. You're fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's perfect. Whatever. Whatever works. Today we recognize and extend a warm and happy congregational welcome to everyone who has joined our society as a member since the annual meeting last May. Today we welcome Martin Garner and Mark Paquette, Karen Lombard and her husband David Case, and Laura Schroeder. Yay! We also welcome Craig Machado and Christine Dutton, who just signed the book on Friday, and they weren't able to be with us this morning. So, Ed.
I'm Ed Olmsted, and as the congregation's president, I'm pleased to welcome you this morning. UU Minister Lawrence McGinty wrote, "To this house we come bringing our boldest dreams, seeking here the inspiration and strength to make them be. To this house we come hoping to bury our broken dreams and to be sustained through the pain they have caused us. Here we seek challenges and commitments that may lead to greater wholeness and deeper meanings. Strange place, this house. Here we cry, sing, laugh, hurt, dance, touch, survive, celebrate, grow, search, doubt, hope, rejoice, pray, trust, care, learn, think, wonder, be, and become. Wonderful place, this house, where we are welcome and where we welcome one another."
Good morning. I'm Jan Nettler, and I'm representing the Newcomer Connection team right today. And I too am happy to be part of this ceremony to welcome you. We're glad you have chosen to become members of what Reverend McGinty called a strange place, where we cry and sing, laugh, hurt, dance, touch, survive, celebrate, grow, search, doubt, hope and rejoice, pray, trust, care, learn and think, wonder, be, and become. You have already made contributions by your presence and in other ways. You have included yourself into our story, into the history of this congregation and the larger movement of which it is part.
Now I invite everyone to please rise and join in saying your part in this ceremony of welcome. The first part is for the new members, and Karen and David, you need that. And Mark and Martin, do you have it? Yes, okay. So the first part is for the new members, and I'm sorry, those of you on Zoom, you're not going to be able to say it loud and say it proud.
We enter this community with hope and possibility in our hearts, pledging to participate in and support the work of this congregation. We are grateful for your welcome.
Now it's your turn. We welcome you as we were once welcomed ourselves. We seek to be open and inclusive, respecting your inherent dignity, your ideas, and your vision, in times when it is easy and at times when it's difficult. We seek to be supportive, not only when you reach out for courage to us, but also when you need us to reach out to you. We welcome you as members of this congregation, of this faith, of our shared spiritual journey. We And now please join in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Thank you all. Stand up. Turn around and say hello. Wave to everyone on Zoom. Wow, 42 screens this morning. A lot of people on Zoom this morning. Welcome, welcome everybody, Zoomers.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to do something on the hill.
And now say hello to everyone else. Good morning. Hey, Amy, great to see you. Who else is there? Jean, Robbie, nice to see you again. How's Baltimore,
Yeah.
Dave, Catherine? Good to see you. Laura,
Bring your hair
Molly,
around your ears on the right side.
John, nice to meet you. Hello. Gail and John, Sally, Austin. Good to see you all. Evelyn and Gil, Diane, Teresa, Lori, Nancy, you look like you're having fun out on a walk. Sally, I hope you're enjoying that cane. Jane, Sue, hi Sue. Peggy, good to see you. Who else is there? Allison, great to see you. Cheryl, Greg, Kat, hi, Yaya and Elizabeth, Linda, Corky. I'm glad so many of you are here this morning. I hope many of you are going to stay for the annual meeting. It's an important one. And now it's time for everyone who is leaving for religious education activities to depart. And we will sing you out. You can follow Eva, who's right there. I'm changing things up. You know that my favorite verse of that hymn is, "Don't be afraid of some change." So I'm changing something. This reading comes from a UU minister named Marcus Hartleaf, who's serving now in Marin, California. He wrote, "The Unitarian Universalist congregation where I served as an intern made a mosaic tree of life the summer before I arrived. Congregants of all ages came together to craft the tree's leaves using bits and pieces of broken ceramics, jewelry, glass, and stone. There are many precious personal items in the tree, including fragments of the Berlin Wall, a father's watch face, pieces of great-grandmother's china, and a key to the front door of a beloved home. Like the members of the community that brought them together, each part is imbued with memories and meaning. Each fragment holds a piece of the truth. Unitarian Universalists are mosaic makers. We are people who bring together the broken pieces of our histories and the shining pieces of our seeking, and piece by piece, create a mosaic religion. But our mosaic making tells another story, one essential to the purpose of religious community, one that lies not in the beautiful and broken bits and pieces, but in the grout. Grout, that chalky, gritty stuff that is squeezed between the cracks of the tiles. In a mosaic, the grout holds the image together, unifying disparate pieces into a whole. We help make the grout when we learn each other's names, when we reach out across generational divides, when we welcome newcomers, and when we gather to grieve and memorialize a beloved one who has died. Grout happens in board meetings and committee meetings and endless emails. It's in the potlucks, the rise to church, conversations in the social hall, conversations on Zoom. It is what holds all the pieces together. Our generosity of spirit, time, and resources makes everything we do possible. And our Sunday morning contributions help us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half of the proceeds of each week's offering support our operating budget here, and half are shared outside our walls. You can mail in a check or donate online. The link is in the chat. Oh, and we now have reached the 21st century, and you can also access our online donation page by using the right there on your phone. Yes, I know what it is, the QR code. Thank you. It's in there, it's slow to access. You can also put cash or a check in the offering plate. Our morning offering will now be given and very gratefully received. Meditation comes from the very end of that reading by Marcus Hartleaf. Hold us like the grout that holds the pieces of mosaic. Gather us in through time and space, and make all our broken pieces whole in community. In our multiplicity, make us one. From each of our jagged edges, give us the shape of communal beauty. We'll take time together now in silence. The members of our partner church in Transylvania, in the village of Karcsonfalva, sing that same hymn in Hungarian. The US Unitarians borrowed it from them. In Transylvania, their church has been Unitarian since the 16th century. And the founder of their Unitarian faith was a pastor named Francis David, who died for his beliefs. David wrote, "We need not think alike to love alike." So annual meeting Sunday is a time for looking back and for looking forward. And this morning, we're going to look back a long ways for a few minutes. The branches of our faith today are wide, and its long ago roots are in the Christian tradition. So the Catholic Church was declared and was the one true church in Europe once Christianity found its way there in the early part of the Common Era. And then in 1517, a priest named Martin Luther issued his 95 Theses, which were a protest against what he saw as corruption in the church. And whether or not this was his original intent, it probably wasn't. New and competing Protestant movements sprang forth. And over the next hundreds of years, passions ran high about theological differences and, of course, the political allegiances that were related to those people of different religious beliefs. It was a very dangerous century, with religious wars in nearly every part of Europe. And in 1531, there was a 20-year-old Spaniard named Michael Servetus who published a small book he called On the Errors of the Trinity. In it, Servetus argued, one, that there's no evidence in the Bible that Jesus is divine, and two, that there are no teachings about the Trinity. So Servetus' book was condemned by the Catholics and by the Lutherans and by the Calvinists, who were the two leading Protestant faiths. But although copies were confiscated and burned, it did remain in clandestine circulation. And Servetus went into hiding, changed his name, moved to France, became a doctor. Years later, he was arrested in Calvin's Geneva on his way to Eastern Europe, and he was tried and convicted and burned at the stake. But his ideas had spread, and they took hold especially in Eastern Europe, in Poland, in Hungary, and in Transylvania. And Transylvania is just east of the border, today's Hungarian border, and is now part of Romania. Francis David became a Unitarian, and he converted others. And one of those was the king, John Sigismund, who in 1568 issued an edict that proclaimed religious toleration in his kingdom, which was extraordinary given what was happening in the rest of the world, in the rest of Europe. No other ruler thought that all God's critters have a place in the choir. And most other priests didn't either. That actually is a universalist idea, not a Unitarian one, that all people are beloved of God and that all are saved. The Unitarians took a while to come around to that themselves. But back in the 16th century, Earl Morse Wilbur, who was a famous Unitarian historian, writes, in the year when King John issued his final charter guaranteeing full religious liberty to even the most bitterly opposed of all the Reformed sects, Protestant theologians were still praising Calvin for having burned Servetus alive. The Inquisition was shedding Protestant blood in the Netherlands. The massacre of Protestants in France on St. Bartholomew's Eve was still a year and a half in the future, and more than 40 years were still to pass before persons ceased to be burned at the stake in England for holding wrong religious opinions. So his edict was revolutionary, and its impact lasted only until the king's death 4 years later. David continued, though, to search for religious truth as he understood it, but his ideas were now considered heretical. And he was arrested, tried, convicted, and imprisoned. He died in the royal dungeon in the castle of Deva on November 15th, 1579. and he is considered the Transylvanian founder of the church and also its martyr to Unitarianism. We need not think alike to love alike. The world of 16th century Europe seems very far away, both in time and in the way the world worked then. The specific heretical offense for which Francis David was tried and convicted was his belief and teaching that people could pray directly to God without invoking Jesus. It seems incredible, as does the form of horrible execution that Servetus endured for writing a book that challenged church dogma. Most weeks I read the summary of news that comes in the form of the magazine The Week. And a lot of what I read there also seems incredible. Not long ago, it might have been there, it might have been somewhere else, I read an update about book banning in schools and public libraries. 37 states have banned at least one book in the past few years. And PEN America, which is a 100-year-old organization that advocates for freedom of expression, says that this past school year has been a record one. Books that deal with race or simply tell the story of civil rights, and books about gender identity and gender expression are most often targeted. Perhaps incidentally, perhaps not, of the 11 most frequently banned books this year, all but one were written by a woman. Is it possible in any place in the world, in any group of people, for everyone to think differently and love alike? Or was that just a hopeful wish from a man whose ideas were ahead of his time and who would die in prison for defending them? Marcus Hartleaf wrote about Unitarian Universalism as a mosaic faith, drawn from many sources, composed of many stories, and ours is a living tradition that evolves with the times. I had fun this year doing a hymn service with hymn sing service in end of November with Ellen, where we used hymns from the older hymnals, and I shared a bit about how the lyrics have been modified, and in some cases not. In June, as most of you know by now, the UUA will hold its Unitarian Universalist Association will hold its annual meeting, and their delegates will continue and vote on proposed changes to the language that currently includes our principles and sources of our faith. And there is controversy about these changes. So you might want to not necessarily follow the process, but at least look into it. And I hope you will either take advantage of sessions offered by our delegate team to talk about the changes, or just look at them yourselves. If you can't attend, I hope you will talk individually with one or more of the delegates so that you can let them know what you think. And so that as they move forward into June, their votes can be informed by your ideas, because they are your delegates, and they're thinking, they're going to vote the way what they think is right, but their thinking will be informed by your ideas. So it's important to let them know how you're thinking about it. In a few minutes, we'll hold our own annual meeting, and we'll vote on whether or not we as a congregation want to adopt the 8th principle. Doing that would affirm our commitment to build beloved community and dismantle systems of oppression. And as you'll hear in the meeting, the form that resolution will take is we, the members of the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. And I said once before that I think the choice of the word dismantle is very deliberate, because racism has been built for hundreds and hundreds of years into the structure of our culture and society. So we can ask if it's possible to make even a tiny dent in those structures that have kept and continue to have given white people privileges and advantages that are denied or made much less accessible to those with brown skin. You might ask that. You might ask, is this just a hopeful wish? And does making the commitment mean we would ignore all the other important challenges? Can we think differently? Can we think differently and love alike? And my answer is, I think we can, and I think we do. And one clear example of that is how gracious and generous and accepting of others' needs and points of view you all have been as we've navigated our response to the pandemic over these past 3 years. You have been amazing, really amazing. In addition to all of the other things that religious community represents and is, it serves as a place where we support one another in aspiring to be our better selves. It is an environment in which we get to learn and practice thinking differently while loving alike. It is an environment that gives us the foundation to share what we've learned when we move beyond this small community. What is it that lets us do that? What is the formula for what Marcus Hartlieb calls the grout that holds the mosaic together? And I think it includes our experience of and faith in the power of and importance of community, which we demonstrate in so many ways. The power of our experience and faith in this particular community and of the larger community that is our Mosaic faith. 650 years later, we can and we must heed the echoes of Francis David's hope. So thank you all. There are so many of you, so many individuals, so many committees and groups and teams who are part of the formula for the grout, who have done and continue to do your parts to keep this community alive and thriving, including just by being present here in this building and on our screens. I would love to name you all, but it would be a very long recital, and I'd leave somebody out, and we have more to do. So we are going to begin our annual meeting. We're actually going to try to do it a little more quickly, just because I know that some of you are heading for the climate march in the pipeline demonstration in Springfield. And so we're going to end the service a little bit early, and then in about 10 minutes, we'll start the annual meeting. So those of you who are in the Great Hall are welcome to leave for a few minutes to get some air, or you can look at the exhibit of Steve Kramer's amazingly beautiful photographs, which are on that wall of the parlor. And if anyone didn't have an opportunity last week to look through the artwork that Alice Zuvers bequeathed to us, that's on that side of the parlor, and you are more than welcome and encouraged to take something as a memento of Alice, or just because you don't have to have known Alice at all if it's something you like. Those of you who are on Zoom, who are staying for the annual meeting, you can just remain on the meeting. Just stay in the meeting. We're not switching Zoom meetings, and come back to your seats in 10 minutes or so. Soon we will thank our outgoing officers and elect new ones. We will vote on accepting the fiscal 2023 budget and on adopting the 8th principle as a congregation. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our final hymn, number 318, We Would Be One. If you are going now, enjoy this beautiful day and go in peace. If you are staying, feel free to get up and move around for a few minutes, and we will pass out clipboards for people to sign into the meeting. Go in love and go in peace.
Hello, Zoom participants. I'm going to be putting you into a breakout room in about 2 or 3 minutes. So you take a walk. If you need to take a little break, that's fine. But when you come back to your screens, you'll go immediately into a breakout room to have your attendance taken. Then we'll come back to the annual meeting.
Hi, Kathy. Shall we pause or stop the recording?
Okay, you may go into your breakout rooms and have a nice chat with the people there while you're waiting to be counted. Those of you who remain in the general room, it's time for you to go to your breakout rooms. Okay, for the purpose of getting this into the chat, which will then be sent to Lori, I see me, Larry, Sally, Susan, Peggy, Corky, and Mimi. That's 7 people. Me, Larry, Laura, Sally Lawton, Susan Murphy, Peggy Mish, Teresa's in another room, and Corky and Mimi. That's 8 people in the general room. Laura, can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, Kathy, I can hear you. Kathy, you're getting the totals for all of the breakout rooms. Is that correct?
No, it says in the guide that they're going to text it to you by telephone.
Oh, okay. Mine says that you will text the total number of members to me.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me close the rooms and then ask the people who were counting in the rooms, and we'll just listen in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm closing all rooms.
Who are the people in the rooms?
The 4 counters are Jane Simons. We'll see when they get here. Jane, could you report the number in your room? Jane Simons. Dave Nelson, report the number in your room. Lori Lozelle, report the number in your room. And Molly Hale, report the number in your room. Just say it verbally for Laura.
Lori, I think you're muted. Oh, you can't unmute. Okay.
Type it in the chat then, Lori. Oh, let's see. They can't unmute themselves. I will do that.
Lori has 7. Is that correct, Lori? 7? Correct. Excellent.
Okay.
Laura?
Dave?
Yeah, I have 6 members in our breakout room.
6. Thank
6.
you, Dave.
Yeah.
6.
Should be able to unmute now.
Laura, this is Jane. We have
Thank
5.
you.
Jane, how many?
5.
5. Thank you, Jane.
And have we heard from Molly yet?
Oh, I'm here. We had 6.
Okay,
6.
we're all counted.
Now, I just want to clarify that there's 2 sets of 2 people in one window that I counted. So
So you
just like-
counted members' heads.
I counted members, yep.
That's fine.
Learn one screen.
Hi, Catherine.
Kathy Lilly,
Yes,
in the past, if there were 2 members on a screen, the message was that the second member in the voting that's going to come up during the meeting, that they should put their vote in the chat.
yes. And that's still for all of you who are here on Zoom. If there are 2 people in your room and you want to vote on someone, one should vote on the poll and the other should write their vote into the general chat saying, I vote yes, I vote no, and count it out of the chat. If you can't do either of those, just speak it up and tell it to me.
Take the names that are written on the clipboard.
Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes,
Kathy,
I hear you.
this is Andrea. I have a question. I have a class at noon, and if I have to leave before the voting on the eighth principle happens, can I put it in the chat? Can I put my vote in the chat?
I believe we've not allowed proxy voting in the past, but put your vote in the chat. I don't, it won't hurt. And I'm certain it's, in case it's a close one, we'll leave it up to the parliamentarian.
It probably won't be close, but symbolically, it's important for me being
I
on the
understand.
racial justice team. Okay, thank you.
We can consider it a provisional ballot.
Okay, until someone counts it and looks for the chads.
Where's Chad?
So is he going to read questions? Are they going to?
So pretty soon they should be ready to start in the Great Hall. And at that time, we'll spotlight the Great Hall or the pulpit and continue from there.
There.
It's nice to see so many people on Zoom. We haven't had that since the pandemic.
Yeah.
For somebody who just asked, where's chat? You run your cursor over the lower part of your screen and there's a little box that says chat, which you can click on.
Everyone found it.
I found it.
Good for you, Evelyn. Kathy Lilly,
Yes,
this is Teresa. I may not be able to vote on the poll because I'm moving around while I'm in the meeting, but I will be listening to everything, and I may need to just speak my vote when the time
Okay.
comes, if that's
that's
okay.
okay.
Okay,
When
thank you.
If someone speaks their vote, I will type it into the chat so we'll have it saved.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Excellent.
bye-bye.
Kathy, thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank Laura too, she's doing the clerk's work there from her home.
I'm live here.
Thank you.
Laura.
You're
Can you hear me
welcome.
out there? Well,
Here is Sally with the special cane.
okay. Now,
Hello, Sally.
uh,
Right. You want to see it?
Looks like Ed's calling us. Ed is calling us
start
to you.
momentarily.
So mute
If
yourselves while the
board
mute
members, if you're
meeting
willing,
starts.
would sit up
Okay.
here.
Mute ourselves? Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't know how many
trying to
board
follow
members
this
are online.
conversation, but the script goes by so fast. I can't get it all read.
Waiting for a count. So. the
Zip, zip,
couple
zip.
More minutes.
We've reached the quorum.
Right, we have
Where's
69
Sally?
members counted. There's still some to report after that, but we have a quorum. So.
What do you want?
I was looking for Sally, but
And.
Evelyn and Gil, mute yourselves.
When you're done
Oh.
counting up, if you can just text Laura and
Oh,
then.
I made
we'll have
myself a cup of
full
tea.
number.
Sally, mute yourself.
Mute myself, okay.
If, Laura, are you ready to start?
Yes.
You can text me. Okay, thank you. All right. Good morning. My name is Ed Olmsted, President of the Society. I now call the 2023 annual meeting of the Unitarian Society and Northampton and Florence to order. I've had the privilege and honor of serving this community as USNF's president this past year. I send a warm welcome to each of you, both in person and online, members and friends. Members will be able to vote. Friends are welcome to listen. We are gathering today, both in person and on Zoom, and we appreciate your patience as we navigate the nuances and any possible glitches of this hybrid meeting and voting. The board's chosen the hybrid format, recognizing that the risks of gathering in person are not zero, and that there are some members and friends who might not be able to participate in person. We are grateful for the technological assistance of Kathy Lilly and Larry. Also, there's a whole Zoom room, and we cannot see everyone who's attending on Zoom, including our clerk, Laura Porter. Before I close the discussion on any agenda item, I will check to see if people have questions or comments online, which might take a moment. I will also confirm that Laura is ready to move on to the next item. In order to assist with smooth technology operations, we ask you to keep your video off and please mute yourself. Unless you're a board member, you can keep your video on, except when invited to do otherwise by the moderator or speaker. Please also refrain from using the chat except for questions or comments regarding the proceedings. Our business here today includes hearing reports from the minister, the president, and our treasurer. We will vote to approve the 2023-24 slate of offices and the budget for the upcoming 2023-24 fiscal year. Additionally, we will vote on adopting the 8th principle for our congregation. And Jess Jones, yes, thank you. Jess Jones has some opening words for us. All right, we had a little mix-up on the opening words. We had opening words for the service, so those will suffice for the meeting as well. I apologize for that. Under appointment of the moderator, I will serve as moderator for this meeting. Jan Nettler graciously has agreed to advise on any parliamentary issues that might arise. And now we will hear the minister's report from the Reverend Janet Bush.
It has become our custom to begin by honoring and holding in our hearts and minds members and former members who have died since our last annual meeting. I'll read their names and then we will have a moment of silence, and I invite you to please rise in body or spirit. We remember Michael Holroyd, Carl Drum, Mike Nagy, Ellen Dickinson, Cynthia Barker, Marty Abuza, and Alice Sewers. Please be seated. It's wonderful to see you all. We still have 40 screens. And it's my pleasure to formally thank those of you who have served in elected offices for the past year. It would be lovely to have you stand because we want to honor you and because it's nice for people who don't know you to put names to faces. So if I call your name, please stand. And if your video is turned off, it would be great if you turn it on. We'll wait until the end to give them a round of applause and thank you. So thank you to our nominating committee co-chairs, Nancy Whittier and Laurel Foster Moore. I know you're there. Nancy's probably at Smith Commencement. To Fran Adams, Patty Cowden, Bill Diamond, and Terry Herniker. I know Terry couldn't be here. Thank you also to Steve Kramer and Lori Loisel, who's on the screen, who co-moderated the coordinating council, and to Kim Henrishon, who took the notes. Thank you to board members Judy High, Molly Hale, who has agreed to serve an extra year if you so choose, to Julie Chandler, Rick King, our outgoing clerk Laura Porter, who's helping with Zoom, VP soon-to-be President Stephanie Baird, where are you? I know you're here. Past President, soon-to-be past President Ed Olmsted, and Jane Simons, who is stepping down as past president after serving on the board for 6 years, 2 3-year terms. And to the indefatigable Dave Nelson, leaving the board after 10 years, 9 as our treasurer. It will be hard for me to realize I'm at a board meeting with Ed not there. So yes, thank you to all of you. And of course, I also want to acknowledge and thank our incredibly strong and dedicated staff, including our preschool assistants, Ian Barnard, Grace O'Day, teachers Jessica Quintana and Eva Wigan-Whittier. And we will be saying goodbye, unfortunately, to our wonderful Emma Gaudreau, our preschool teacher who bought a new house that is too far away for a short Sunday morning job. So thank you, Emma. We will miss you. Thanks also to our youth coordinator, Collie Williams, to Frank Talon for all he does to maintain our building and provide a steady presence on Sunday mornings, to Ellen Cogan for her amazing musical gifts and presence. And thank you to Michael Taylor, our manager of congregational operations, who always has our best interests at heart. And finally, to Jessica Harwood, our gracious and multi-gifted director of faith development and community engagement. I am so lucky to work with all of them, and you are so lucky to have such a fabulous staff. And I cannot believe that I have been here for 14 years. And I'm still very honored to be a minister. Thank you.
From the president, that's me. I'm finishing my year as president. As I am finishing my year as president, I'm struck by how this year seems to have gone by in a flash. It shows me the value of our president's team model, working collaboratively with Stephanie Baird as vice president, Jane Simons, past president, and Reverend Janet Bush has made the role of president much easier and more enjoyable. Here's what I see of the last year from where I sit. We end this year on a stronger footing than we began. We have some challenges to face to keep our income in balance with our aspirations for continued vibrant programming. We're in a good position to meet those challenges. The board has approved a budget as developed by the Finance Committee that we believe is reasonable and realistic for the coming year. Thank you to the members of our Stewardship Committee who have continued to take on the task of encouraging monetary and personal engagement and contributions that are vital to our future as a congregation. The message of this year's stewardship campaign, as in past years, is that we appreciate all of you, all of our contributions, all of your contributions and your presence. We have successfully continued high-quality hybrid services and other hybrid events that allow members, friends, visitors to join and contribute as they are able from wherever they may be. Thank you to those of you who volunteer generously and willingly to take on the tech jobs each week that make hybrid services and this meeting possible. You make us more inclusive and more welcoming. Looking to the future, after discussion and consideration by the Board of Trustees and the Coordinating Council, Jane Simons initiated and welcomes input into participation in a bicentennial visioning group. The group has currently identified 3 areas of focus for celebrating our 200th anniversary in 2024-25. Historical retrospective, community activities, events, and celebrations, and congregation-wide visioning for the future. If you haven't yet, you can join in as well. The Climate Action Group began an effort to decarbonize our building as quickly as practical. They came to the board in October to request approval to participate in an incentive program from our electrical supplier to insulate the attic over the parlor and adjacent office spaces. They found a way to do that at a cost 90% covered by the incentives by our electrical provider. The task was completed and is one important step towards the goal of our becoming carbon neutral and moving greenly into the future. The COVID response team has provided and continues to monitor and provide guidance on how to be most safely inclusive in our COVID policies and health precautions. The members of this team have actively done their research, followed the statistics, and considered what guidance would best work for our congregation. With the leadership of Reverend Janet Bush and Director of Faith Development, Jessica Harwood, we have explored as a board and as a congregation the changes proposed to the UUA principles. These changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws and any amendments are to be voted on in June. We have a full slate of 5 delegates attending and voting, and as Janet said earlier, I hope people will weigh in for us who are delegates so we know what the will of this better know what the will of the congregation is. These are just some examples of what we as a community have done this year, and are examples of the strength of this congregation and what we have done working together. We trustees have reflected this year on how important and blessed we are to have a place of welcome for so many. May we continue being and evolving as an inviting, affirming, engaging, and nurturing congregation for everyone here and for all who have yet to find us. Thank you. We will now move online where Dave Nelson will present the budget. And Dave, I suggest in doing this, you're on Zoom, maybe you take questions or comments from Zoom first, and then when we're done, when you're done with that, I will check the chat and we can move and take questions or comments from anybody in the Great Hall. So turn it over to Dave. If we could spotlight him and check do the sound for the, oh, he's doing it up there. Okay, good.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome from Baltimore, from Maryland. I'm visiting my brother at the moment. Before we talk about the budget, I just want to call your attention to the brief report, my report on page 15 of the annual meeting, annual report. Especially, I want to draw your attention to the extraordinary generosity besides pledge payments that the members and friends have made. We've reached already through this year, we've reached almost $16,000 of extra donations. Half of that from the Share the Plate, and then the other half from various other efforts. Ministers Help Fund, the Puerto Rico Hurricane Relief, the Interfaith Help Fund, Hands Up for Haiti and Songe Aidi, UU Mass Action Network, and Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services. All those outside of our budget. So many thanks for your generosity there. We do plan to continue with the 50-50 Share the Plate next year. People are quite generous in that effort. Okay, so about the budget. I hope you had a chance to review it if you had interest in it. I'll just summarize, well, there's a budget overview and the budget itself in attachment 1. I'll just summarize some of the highlights and then open it up to questions. And I believe I'll also make a motion to approve the budget at the end, and then we'll have discussion, a second and discussion. So as we all know, COVID is waning, fortunately, after 3 years. Our services programs have pretty much returned to pre-COVID levels. Most of our church meetings are still held over Zoom for its conveniences, but more and more people are attending Sunday services and activities in person. Outside groups have expressed interest in our building, so we're getting some income from there. And pledge payments have been quite strong throughout the year. Thank you for that. Our very vibrant stewardship committee reports we had a stewardship campaign raising $320,000 for next year. Pretty much it's about the same as we had last year. We anticipate a few more additional pledges throughout the year. So we're budgeting for a gross pledge income of $325,000 for next year, which makes up about a little more than 75% of our total income. The other non-pledge income should reach about $95,000 next year. Half of that comes from the endowment draw. Each year we draw 5% of the average going back 3 years, 12 quarters. We take the average and take 5%. This year it's about $68,000. $20,000 goes to the House and Property Fund for the more major improvements and repairs for the building. Any routine maintenance of the building is covered under the budget. So our total budget income then is $414,000, $414,015. I just want to point out that our stewardship pledges have maintained through COVID, which is, we're very grateful for that. But our non-pledge has not returned to pre-COVID levels, and I'll return and make brief comments about that a little bit later. So that's the income. On the expense side, we divide our expenses into 3 main categories: the building, programs, and staff. Building expenses make up about 9% of our total budget. We anticipate about a $3,000 increase, mostly due to increased utility expenses and building insurance. Program expenses is basically everything we do: office expenses, RE, religious services, committees, and programs, and other things. Makes up about 14% of our budget. And it should come in a little bit less, about $2,000 less than last year. Most of that's from reduced UUA dues. Our UUA dues used to be many years ago based on membership, but is no longer. It's based on our budget. We pay 6.5% of what our budget was 2 years ago. And since our budget fluctuates a little bit, so our annual dues also fluctuate a bit. The program expenses also includes a small $1,000 contingency fund for unanticipated expenses. So that leaves about 77% for staff expenses. As our fabulous minister has just said, that told us that we do have a fabulous staff, and our intention is to, our desire is to compensate them as fairly as possible by the UUA standards, the UUA recommendations.
Excuse me, David.
Yes.
Question from the Great Hall. I don't know, is it possible for you to share your screen on the figures?
I can. I'd rather, if I can wait until we're done, and then I'll be happy to specific questions.
Thank you.
Okay. I just don't want to distract from the messages here. We've had some recent impacts to our staffing budget, mostly due to inflation, wage inflation, and cost of living. The UU salary guidance has changed. In concept, it's better approach, but the salary recommendations are higher than we've done in the past. Before the change, we had achieved all the UUA guidelines for all of our staff, met or exceeded that. But we won't be able to sustain or meet the UUA guidelines without additional income, either pledges or other income. For next year, we are able to offer a 4.5% across the board increase for all of our staff. So staff expenses have gone up about $18,000 over the current year. So total expenses are $428,148. Income of $414,015. So our projected deficit is $14,133. As in over the past 5 years, we've been able to offset any budget deficits with the what we call a surplus carryover from the fiscal year 18, which we had the congregation had approved to use as a to offset budgets in the foregoing years. And it's lasted longer than we anticipated, so we're still able to offset any budget deficits. So in a sense, we will have no deficit after we compensate with the carryover fund. However, the Finance Committee and the board realize that we can't continue relying on the carryover fund. It will run out in the next couple of years if we continue with these expenses or don't increase income. The endowment draw, the pressures on the stock market with inflation and possible recession might have an impact on our ability to draw as much money from the endowment. And we will be entering an interim minister period in a couple of years, which may put pressures on income and expenses. So, I want to focus a bit on the other income, just a little bit. As I said, we haven't reached pre-COVID levels yet. We had a very successful auction in the past before COVID, raised between $12,000 and $15,000 each year. And I think we need to look at maybe replacing or bringing back the auction or other activities. Maybe some sources of income from non-members. We're not relying on our membership for providing additional sources of income. And I want to focus on one item in particular, and that's the grocery card scrip. It makes up a small amount of our income, but I think we can do a lot better. We raise about $5,000 in profit from our grocery card scrip sales, but there's only about 12 people who actually routinely buy scrip. So if we can get $5,000 from 12 people, I think we can easily double our profit from grocery card scrip. It's easy, doesn't cost you anything. When you buy say $100 gift card, you get $100 worth of groceries. We just get to buy those. We purchase those gift cards at a discount. Big Y Stop and Shop is 5% discount, and from River Valley, it's a 10% discount. So it's easy. You just use it instead of a debit card or writing a check at the grocery store. So hopefully we'll be able to get more people to participate in that. So that's the presentation in a nutshell. I'll make a motion that we accept the budget, approve the budget for next year. And then someone will second, and we'll open it up to questions. And I can put up the numbers for specific questions if we need to.
I second.
May I ask who second? Who was the person who did the second? Was that Kathy Lilly?
I second Kathy Lilly.
Thank you.
So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll deal with those first, and then we'll open it up to the Great Hall.
Communicate with him. Let's see. All right, let's try this. Dave, you ask for questions online and in person online. Can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds good.
I suggest you move on.
Can
I
you hear
don't
me?
think there's any questions online.
All right.
Are there any questions here in the Great Hall or online? Or comments? The microphone's right down there on the stand here. Janet, right down there. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Wow, making it easy on me.
I see no questions or comments at this point. So right, I put the chat, I don't see anything. Right. So I call for a vote on the motion in the Great Hall. If those in favor, raise your hands online. You'll see a poll on the screen, which is people are getting to, and yes. All in favor, raise your hand, yes.
Of those of you online who have not voted, if you'd like to put your vote in chat.
Okay, clear majority. Oops. All opposed, oh, sorry, yes, all opposed, sorry.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hands if you are opposed, okay. I see no hands.
Do we have a count online?
Yes.
We have 23 in favor and one abstention.
Unanimous online, one abstention. The motion passes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. All right.
Thank you all.
Just, all right. Okay. Laura, do you have the numbers you need, and are you ready to continue?
Kathy, I just didn't get second numbers. I got 23 from the screens. Did we have any numbers from?
There were no second numbers.
There were no second numbers. Okay, so 23
Okay,
here.
thank you.
23 in favor and none
I
against,
wanted to
and
finish.
one
We needed to
abstain.
finish, so she can.
You don't need numbers.
We just need them because we need to know if people need to vote on screen. Okay, so the majority was in favor and we have a majority here.
Just all, sometimes I've been impatient at stop signs and I found, yes, go ahead.
So you don't need numbers, they're clearly passed.
Right.
That's all it's motion.
Yes, I need Laura to be taking notes. That's what I want to make sure she's ready to take notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So are we ready?
Yes.
Laura says yes.
Okay. Laura, yes. Okay, thank you. Somehow I'm not getting these messages. Right. All right, we will move on. Presentation of the and vote for the slate of officers as nominated. Okay, where's my motion here? I make a motion to, I thought I had that written here somewhere. Okay. Oh. Can you make that any bigger, Kathy? It's very small on the screen. Okay. All right. So I'll read to you the slate of officers. It's a bit hard to read on the screen. Vice President nominated for Vice President is Emily Quintana for 3 years. That's 1 as Vice President, 1 as President, and 1 more as past President. At-large Board of Trustee, Kate Crookmeyer for 3 years. Board of Trustees at-large member Molly Hale, who agreed to serve 1 more year to balance out the turnover going forward. For clerk, Jessica Jones, 2-year term. Auditor, David Klimzak, returning to a 3-year term, goes 2023 through 25. Coordinating Council co-moderator, Joan O'Brien. Nominating committee member, Steve Kramer, and nominating committee member, Nancy Whittier. And treasurer, oh yes, treasurer Ruth Banta. It takes a village.
You don't really need to ask for questions, just call for a vote. It's an election.
Okay. If there are no questions or comments, I'm going to call for the motion. And the motion is are you in favor of electing the whole slate? Oh, sorry. Are there any nominations from the floor, either on Zoom or in person? Okay. Are you in favor of electing the whole slate of candidates as presented? My motion is raise your hand if so. In favor? Okay. All right. It visibly it definitely has passed in the Great Hall and also online. The motion and all yeah, okay. All right.
You really don't need much here.
Yes. Okay.
You should ask for all.
Okay. All right. Any what is it, not in favor? Anyone not in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. No hands raised, none online. Okay. The motion passes. Congratulations to incoming board members and graduating. If you don't mind standing up, those of you who've been elected, I think it's nice for people to see who they voted for.
Laura, it was unanimous online.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
All right. And Laura, are you ready to move on?
1 minute.
Next is going to be the presentation. No, I'll get closer to the microphone. Next, we're going to have the presentation of the Generosity of Spirit Award.
Yes,
And I
you can
think
move on.
I'll come down here. Okay, thank you. I'll take it. No. Hello. Yes, okay. It is with great pleasure, and I have to say, I'm saying these words, but Jane gathered the information, and it was very key in these words I'm sharing. It's with great pleasure and appreciation that the Board of Trustees presents this year's Generosity of Spirit Award to Kathy Brown. Kathy doesn't really talk about you. Yeah. Yeah. Kathy's decades of faith-driven service in this gathered community and beyond these walls epitomizes what we've come to call generosity of spirit. Kathy has long been involved with the coming of age and youth and our partner, and as well as in our partner church in Transylvania. She helped spearhead the Widening the Circle work, served as coordinating council co-moderator, and now co-leads the racial justice team. She was very involved with Sanctuary and continues her warm connection to Arita and her family. Kathy has been actively involved with our children and our youth, teaching for years in the religious education program, shepherding many a coming-of-age class, and serving now as youth advisor. Alan Dorman calls himself honored to be a fellow youth group advisor with her, saying, "Her energy is infectious, and she is a joy to work beside." In fact, she came to this meeting pretty closely, directly from camping with the youth. Golly Williams, our youth and young adult coordinator, says Kathy Brown has been a major and steadfast source of support for the youth group over the past 2 years. She is an excellent advisor, knows how to make sure everyone feels included. I don't know how our group would have made it through the past 2 years without her. Jessica Harwood, our Director of Religious Education and Community Engagement, has this to say: "I first met Kathy when I took the youth group Leaning. Kathy would bring gigantic plastic tubs that she used for gardening. Without batting an eye, she would lug a tub filled with 50 pounds of potatoes through the farm fields, up and down stairs, and into the basement of Kate's Kitchen, a soup kitchen, to donate the harvest, and say something like, 'This is exactly the way to do it.' To me, that will forever be Kathy. Whatever it is, Kathy shows up willing to carry the load with a smile." Good. I know, but I got there's a little bit more. There's a couple more people have some words to share. Greg Dreesen recalls. But Greg Dreesen recalls Kathy in a small group stewardship conversation, talked about why this place matters. Kathy responded with such heartfelt love for our congregation that I went up to her afterwards and said, "You should be president." She got back to me later and said she'd be honored. I'd forgotten, and she didn't mention that she'd served as president once before. And finally, this from Marianne Bernini Coughlin. And I think this is a more personal. Kathy has helped me grow into a much better USNF member. I've learned so much from her patient, optimistic, can-do attitude. When I've hit a wall or feel totally frustrated, she is the one who gets me back down to reality and ready to move on. I appreciate that more than words can ever express. Kathy has lived and continued to epitomize generosity of spirit and her abiding love for our community. With gratitude and love, we present this year's Generosity of Spirit Award to Kathy. And we have a plant over here that you can lug home. Okay. Thank you. And I appreciate you personally. You always are there honestly sharing things and not afraid to talk about whatever it is in a loving way. Thank you very much. So we will move on to our consideration to vote to adopt the eighth principle for the Unitarian Society and USNF as proposed by the Racial Justice Team and strongly recommended by the Board of Trustees. The Racial Justice Team, led by Kathy Brown and Marianne Bernini Coughlin, continued to explore the eighth principle this year by holding listening circles and conversation with members, including the Board of Trustees. They requested the board bring this to you all for a vote, and you see on the annual meeting agenda that we, the board, agreed and strongly support their request. Jane Simons online has some words to share about this, this matter.
Good morning and aloha from Hawaii, where the sun is just coming up. I'm Jane Simons, soon to be past president of the USNF board. On behalf of the board, we want to thank Marianne Bernini Coughlin and Kathy Brown for their labor of love co-chairing USNF's Widening the Circle Steering Committee and Racial Justice Team. And we thank each of you, members and friends, for all steps, small and large, to help envision and build a land and community where justice shall roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We recognize that this is a continuing journey only made possible on the shoulders of USNF's Big Old Gay Committee, the earlier Journey Towards Wholeness, USNF's Climate Action Group, working for climate justice and taking steps small and large to end the degradation of our blue planet home. Our blue boat home, sorry about that, our blue boat home, but now you know it's the planet. We also stand on the shoulders of USNF's participation in circles of care supporting refugees, on the shoulders of Sanctuary, and more recently, USNF The Vote. Called in all of these ways to acknowledge and re-examine our largely white European roots of colonization, domination, and planetary exploitation. Also to re-examine middle-class and heteronormative ways of being, and to better our world. The USNF board strongly supports this congregation's adoption of the eighth principle. As you've heard earlier, the eighth principle calls us to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. What is meant by beloved community in Unitarian Universalism? We asked ourselves that question on the board. We did what all smart people do. We looked it up. Actually, Rick King looked it up. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, abilities, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and in the broader world. In this context, beloved community names, affirms, and operationalizes the very values and compassionate accountability we at USNF have been practicing and aspire to, leading your board to strongly support the adoption of the 8th principle. Thank you.
Kathy Brown to come forward to make the motion.
I make a motion that we, the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence, adopt the 8th principle as proposed by the Racial Justice Team, which states, we, the members of the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. And I just have a little comment here. The Racial Justice Team has worked with other committees and groups within the society over the past couple of years to do some really amazing work. And we have been so encouraged that people on the council meetings have agreed to continue this work and to set new goals for the coming year. So we've been very excited about this proposal. And now, do I have to call it for a vote? Or are you doing it?
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Booker seconds the motion. Is there any discussion or questions? I don't see anything on the chat. Are we all set online? Okay. Jan has a question.
Can someone who made the motion or on that committee explain what it means to accountably dismantle racism, et cetera? What does the accountability mean?
I'll take a stab at this, but Marianne, you may have to help me. Accountability means we don't just say that, oh, as a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we're adopting this and then let it lie low. Accountability means that we look inside at ourselves and really do the work that's necessary to dismantle the racism, which Janet talked about earlier. And that means that we continue to look at ourselves, to think about how we, people of white privilege, have been able to, we have things that other people do not have, and how we can bridge that gap and change things. So we're holding ourselves accountable to the work. And one of the reasons we didn't just adopt the 8th principle, as many congregations did, immediately, and then try to do the work, and it hasn't gone so well, we felt that doing the work first would be more important. And it will be doing it as individuals in committees and groups and continuing to focus on making a difference. One of our RJT members is on the Reparations for Northampton Committee. And that's one of the ways. Anything else? Can she have the mic?
First,
Can you hear me? Closer? Okay. Janet knows I'm going to faint. Basically, I think Kathy covered it really well, but what I would add to that is what we've seen in the past year is this really has become a conversation that we're all having in various teams and committees. And for me, the accountability question comes in with that this isn't just going to be something we do today and forget about, but that as we meet, not just the racial justice team, but through the coordinating committee, we're seeing the different teams making decisions on how they approach the work they do. And for me, that's the accountability piece, is that it's something we don't just pat ourselves on the back, say we did it, and leave it there. It's an ongoing process.
There's a question in the chat that's related. I don't know, from Linda Adams, whether Kathy and Marianne have answered your question. The questions were, how will we measure accountability? And how will we show this to the broader community outside the congregation itself? Do you have any responses to that?
I think within the community, USNF, the coordinating
You can keep
council,
the microphone a little closer. Yeah.
the coordinating council has really embraced this. And so that is the venue that we'll use to have this ongoing conversation and have the different teams and committees report back. And then the hope is all of us who are at the coordinating committee representing a team, bring it back to our teams so that it gets, widely distributed through the congregation. I also think with the Sunday announcements in the Beacon, we're doing a really good job of keeping people in touch with the different things that are going on. As far as the wider community, that is something that we constantly are looking at and hope to do, especially post-COVID, as we're starting to do things more and more. This is my first time in the Great Hall without a mask. It's baby steps. Kathy, do you have anything?
Share the plate. We also, when we voted at the coordinating council meeting for Share the Plate recently for the spring, we specifically chose organizations that met our goals as far as, donating money to people who are mobilizing change and to young people. The Performance Project, we've been involved with them, and many of our members have been attending shows of theirs, and they will hopefully be coming here next year. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Janet. If anyone has any more questions on Zoom, please put them in the chat. I don't see any right now.
I want to express gratitude to the people who have been doing this work. As a congregational contrarian, as somebody who cares a lot about language and can quibble about it, I want to thank people for the generosity with which they've heard each other and have the commitment to continuing to hear each other about this. In my view, in this community and other communities of privilege, the virtue signaling and the desire to be seen to be saying the right thing is so rampant that it can make us suspicious even of ourselves and our own aims. And I just want to say that in this community where we know and are known and where we have close connections to each other, I'm very glad that we're taking this on. I don't like the word accounting because it says something else to me, but I know that we hold each other accountable by being in close relationship to each other, which is the most important thing. So thank you to all the people who have spent so much time and listened to those of us who perhaps had less time to get in and do the work. And for me, the word is process and that commitment. Thank you.
Okay. I see any further questions here. I see no further questions online. Okay. Okay, I call for a vote on the motion. All of those in favor in the Great Hall, please raise your hands. Online, people should vote via the poll. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, see no votes here. And passes online. The motion has passed. Thank you all for your great work on this 8th principle. All right. We'll now hear Jess Jones has some closing words for us. And Laura, if you could just let us know when you're ready to move on to the adjournment.
Yes, we're ready.
This is Go in Peace, Seeking Justice by Jim McGow. Can you hear me? Okay.
Good.
When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace, seeking justice. I mean go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when, together, we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace.
Okay. This concludes our meeting. Do we have that? I just want to say before Kathy and Laura, before closing the Zoom meeting, I'm just reminding you to check in with each other to make sure you've got all the numbers and everything you need. And I call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion? Okay, David. And second? Second. Stephanie. Okay, all of you on Zoom, you can unmute yourself and turn on your videos, and everybody raise your hand wherever. Can we get a view of everybody online? Okay, all right. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say yes.
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 All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Bye.
Guess we're all just leaving, right? Oh, that's right. This is not.